Hi, I'm Melsback's Fred, and you can see that I just jokingly put those two watermarks into my OBS scene. Like, I'm not actually making this video using Hypercam 2 or KineMaster, it's just a joke. But anyway, that's off topic. What I want to say is, this is the first video in my series of basically clearing up confusion about certain aspects of me as a person. So some of you may know that I have both autism and ADHD. One thing is, having a mental illness is something that's commonly misunderstood in society. Society just doesn't seem to get how that works. Like, no one really knows it better than someone who actually has a mental illness. Not even a professional would know it better than someone who actually has the mental illness. And there's a reason for that. The reason is we just don't have enough of an understanding about how the brain works. If we did, then someone who doesn't have the mental illness could still get an understanding just by looking at, like, patterns of stuff going on in their brain. So, I'll start off by clearing up some misconceptions and kind of then transition into then kind of transition into what's like what it means in society, what it means for some changes that should be made either in society or towards research, stuff like that, or even towards laws. And, maybe even talk about the topic for the next part of this series. Obviously just stating what the next one will be, not, going into any of the nitty-gritty yet, because it's not that video yet. But, yeah. So, first off, we'll explain some misconceptions and disprove them along the way. Now, remember, this is from the standpoint of someone who has autism and ADHD. So this stuff might be different for someone who has bipolar, schizophrenia, etc. So, yeah. I want to start off by talking about tendencies to get excited and hyperactive due to ADHD. That's one such thing. Well, actually, no. First, before I get into that, I'll explain what I think is the most common misconception amongst anything with a mental illness. That professionals haven't figured out yet. Only the people with the mental illnesses have figured it out, because they know what's going on. Now remember, I have a mental illness, so I know this, and I'm sure any of you watching who have mental illnesses know what I'm talking about. But here's what a lot of people seem to misunderstand. When you have a mental illness, the behaviors that happen as a result of the mental illness, it's not just something that you're more commonly going to do than a regular person. A lot of people seem to misunderstand and think it's just that you're more commonly going to do that. If so, what even is a mental illness then? What it actually is that you're physically unable to stop yourself from doing it a lot of the time. Sometimes even all the time, depending on how severe your mental illness is. it's either a majority of the time you're unable to stop yourself from doing anything about it, or all the time, depending on how bad your mental illness is. So, you may have actually seen me act a little crazy in my videos before. I'm not able to do anything about it. Yeah, I am not able to do anything about it. You may have also seen me rage while recording my videos. That's more of an autism thing. And again, I can't do anything about it. And, you know, the sexually explicit talk that you hear quite often in my videos, like especially the GoAnimate videos when like, you know, it's like Vaporeon's nearby or something. I don't know. But like, I can't do anything about those things. They're outside of my control. Now, you might be wondering then, like, what do those strategies do? Like the strategies therapists talk about, like how do those work? So let me explain. So here's where, first I'll go into like the hyperactivity with ADHD. Basically it's like there seems to be certain situations, so to say, that basically make you less likely to be unable to control something. And so what those strategies are actually doing is they're forcing the situation to be a situation in which you have a higher chance of being able to control it. So like, you know, like I said, for ADHD, the running around acting crazy stuff, something like listening to brown noise makes the situation be one of those situations, because like calming sounds. But for like for the aggressive behavior, something like, for example, whenever I'm entering a situation in which something like that could happen, I just think in my head, okay, that might happen, and that actually will sometimes make it more likely for me to have a chance of being able to control it. Now remember, I also want to say what I mean by unable to control it. What it's like is, it's like, almost like, it seems like there's some logic missing in your brain when trying to do it. Now, I don't mean that there's something physically not there in your brain, as any kind of like EEG or something like that will tell you that there's nothing physical missing. I mean more like, think of it like a file missing on a computer. Like, for example, you, I don't know, delete Notepad on Windows, then you can't edit text files. Well, you could using Microsoft Word or a different text editor, but you can't do it using Notepad anymore because Notepad's gone. It's almost like something like that is how I see it. Which actually is the perfect transition into what can be done about it in terms of research. Studies have shown actually a lot that the brain behaves a lot like how a computer behaves, and that's the basis of how the brain chip stuff is even possible. Sure, you've heard about that on the news. And actually, this is something that's been known ever since the 1900s when transistors were invented. Transistors were literally made as a way to mimic that type of thing. You can look into the history of it. They were. Like any computer science class that's like high school level would teach you that. And I did take a high school level computer science class, and they did say that. So, yeah. That's actually why a lot of like mathematical proofs and stuff like that use stuff pretty similar to the way how instructions used to perform math calculations work on a processor, you know, like Boolean logic and stuff to mathematically prove something, just like how Boolean logic is used at a very low level for processor instructions. So, yeah. What I feel like that means is that really the best way to tackle it, to try to find cures for the mental illnesses, reason no one's done it yet, is simply because we've never kind of just like gotten through all the necessary low level stuff to be able to understand the brain's functionality at a high level. Meaning, it's like, to know how an operating system runs a program, you need to know how the kernel works, you need to know how the bootloader works, you need to know how the BIOS works, you need to know how processor architecture stuff works, all that. Haven't gotten anywhere near that far. Yeah. Basically, we gotta go step by step to eventually get to high level stuff with how the brain works, to where we'd figure out like what types of what term would you even use for that? I'm just gonna use the term digital because I don't know what better term to use. Just because I just don't know what better term to use, I'm just gonna use the term digital because I don't know what better term to use. What kinds of digital abnormalities you find in the brain? You know, like what a file corruption would be like. To find like what would cause the mental illness and correct it either by, you know, putting the version from someone who doesn't have the mental illness in, or by writing your own replacement for it, like, you know, like one of those like open source clone things, which those who have homebrewed a game console before and seen what reverse engineering people have done would probably know what I'm talking about. Like Mesosphere on the Switch. Oh yeah. But yeah, you get it. Like, just some way to correct it after you get all that understanding. And it starts from the most basic level. Figuring out enough about how DNA works to basically extract your brain's instructions from DNA, as that's the most non-invasive. That's like the least invasive way to do something like that. The one that's least likely to raise ethical concerns is to do that. Even that's so complicated, you might want to run it through a computer simulation to speed up the process. Which I'm sure we could make a computer simulation like that. Yeah. So that's what needs to be done in terms of the research side of things. For society's reactions, I just feel like society needs to be aware of what's actually going on. Like what this video is talking about, like what's actually going on, not what is thought to be what's going on, but what's actually going on. Plus, we also gotta take care of like the elephant in the room, the way the government handles stuff, and other types of people in charge of making rules. Because I actually recently got kicked out of a college because of my mental illness. I know, right? That's cruel. They shouldn't be doing that. There should be laws against them doing that, actually. So yeah, we show this type of thing to the government, and they could literally like, implement laws against schools doing this. So, laws that accept people with mental illnesses into society and punish those who try to interfere. Now, I'm not saying I believe in equity rather than equality. What I'm basically instead saying is mental illnesses do not mean that you should not get a chance in life. People seem to think that that's what it's like, but no, you should still get a chance in life regardless of whether you have a mental illness or not. Okay. So now that I've said that, I think I'll tell you what the next video in this series will be on. The next video in this series, kind of a redo of that video I made a long time ago that I took down because it was kind of cringe. And I was handling it in kind of an immature way. It was that video I made where I was ranting about people calling me a zoophile, even though I'm a furry, which is a completely different thing. So, yeah, my next video in this series will be talking about what being a furry actually means versus what people think it means. Alright, this is Mel's Best Friend signing off. Bye-bye.